I'm 65, and I avoid people now. Not out of spite, not because I've given up, but because somewhere along the way, I realized something most people don't admit until it's too late. There comes a time when you stop chasing everyone and start choosing yourself. And at this age, choosing myself feels less like a luxury and more like survival. For most of my life, I was the one who always said yes. Yes to family events. Yes to last-minute favors. Yes to conversations I didn't have the energy for. I used to think it made me dependable. But as I've grown older, I've discovered it made me disappear. There's a quiet shift that happens around this age. You begin to feel time not just pass, but narrow. It becomes less about counting years and more about counting meaning. Every day feels a little more expensive, like you're spending a currency you'll never get back. And that's when I started saying no. Time is no longer something I take for granted. When I was younger, I'd let hours slip away talking to people who never listened or running errands for those who wouldn't do the same for me. Now I treasure the stillness. A quiet morning with a warm drink feels more valuable than a crowded afternoon filled with small talk. It's not about being antisocial. It's about being intentional. Time teaches you what truly matters, and even more painfully, who really matters. I don't have the energy to maintain every relationship I once did. And frankly, not everyone deserves that energy. When I think about where I want my hours to go, it's toward peace, not pretense. There's something beautiful about trimming your social garden, letting go of those who take but never give, releasing the pressure to be everything to everyone. My world has grown smaller, yes, but it's also grown clearer. You start to notice who checks in without needing something, who listens without waiting to speak, who remembers your stories, not just your mistakes. And those are the ones you keep. I've had friendships fade and family ties loosen. At first I tried to fix it. I chased. I explained. I tried to hold everything together. But at some point, I realized, if someone doesn't notice your absence, they didn't truly value your presence. So now, I don't explain myself. I don't justify why I didn't return a call or skip a reunion. I simply choose peace. And in doing so, I've gained something no apology or explanation ever brought me: freedom. It's strange how people respond when you start setting boundaries later in life. Some think you're angry. Others assume you've become bitter. But in reality, it's the opposite. I'm finally at peace because I've stopped pretending to be okay with everything. I no longer tolerate conversations that drain me, expectations that exhaust me, or company that leaves me lonelier than solitude. And speaking of solitude, there was a time when I feared it. The silence, the empty calendar, the evenings with no plans. But what I've learned is that there's a world of richness in being alone. Not lonely. Alone. Solitude has become sacred. It's where I reflect, recharge, and reconnect with myself. There's no pressure to perform, no masks to wear, no small talk to endure. Just me, as I am, with all the wear and wisdom life has gifted me. I've learned to enjoy my own company, to sit with my thoughts instead of running from them, to find joy in simple things: a well-cooked meal, a familiar book, a walk with no destination. These small pleasures feel more profound than any party I ever attended. Relationships also look different now. I used to believe love meant endurance, that if you cared for someone, you stuck it out, even when it hurt. But now I understand that real love doesn't drain you. It doesn't make you feel less. So I've let go of some long-standing relationships, not in anger, but in acceptance. Not everyone grows in the same direction, and holding on out of guilt only slows you down. Some people belong in your story, but not in every chapter. I've also stopped expecting people to change. That was a tough one. I used to believe that if I just loved harder, waited longer, forgave more, they'd come around. They rarely did. And each time I lost a little more of myself trying to help someone who wasn't willing to meet me halfway. Now I will accept people for who they are, but I also decide if who they are fits into my life. It's not judgment. It's discernment. This age has taught me to be my own protector, to guard my peace the way I once guarded my reputation, to nurture my spirit the way I once nurtured everyone else. It's a quiet kind of strength, the kind that says, I love you, but I love me too. I've also noticed that the world itself feels different, faster, louder, more disconnected despite being constantly connected. And I find myself longing for something slower, more grounded. I miss the simplicity of human interaction before it became filtered through screens and notifications. These days, I choose intentional connection. I don't need dozens of friends or endless invitations. I need honesty, warmth, and depth. I want conversations that feed the soul, not ones that skim the surface. I avoid people who bring drama, who stir conflict, who never ask how you're doing, but expect you to listen endlessly. I avoid people who gossip more than they grow, who complain more than they contribute. Instead, I draw close to those who are kind without an agenda, who laugh easily, who say, I'm here, and actually mean it. Those are the people worth holding on to. And the others? I wish them well, from a distance. It's not always easy. There are days when I feel that old guilt creeping back in. Days when I wonder if I'm too closed off, too guarded. But then I remember what it felt like to be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. That's lonelier than being alone. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. If you're 65, 70, or even older, and you've been feeling this shift too, know that it's not just you. Many of us are waking up to the truth that life's too short for anything less than genuine. You are allowed to grow out of relationships. You are allowed to choose rest over performance. You are allowed to prioritize your well-being. You are allowed to be at peace. And if that means avoiding people who pull you away from your center, so be it. You've earned the right to be selective. You've lived through enough to understand what matters. You don't owe anyone access to your time, your energy, or your heart just because they ask for it. This is your time now. Fill it wisely. As the years go on, I've come to see that choosing peace over people isn't a lonely act. It's a liberating one. There's a strange sort of clarity that settles in once you realize your time is more valuable than your reputation. I used to worry a lot about what people thought of me, whether I was polite enough, present enough, helpful enough. But now I ask myself a different question. Was I kind to myself? That shift alone changed everything. I no longer show up to events out of obligation. I no longer answer calls from people who only reach out when they need something. I no longer explain my boundaries or apologize for them. At this stage in life, I've discovered that the most meaningful relationships don't require constant proof or performance. They simply exist, like a quiet undercurrent of trust. These days, I value presence over performance. I'd rather sit in silence with someone who truly sees me than entertain a room full of people who never ask how I'm really doing. That's not isolation. That's discernment. And it's something that only comes with age. When I was in my 40s and 50s, I thought relationships were like houses. If they had cracks, you patched them up. You kept repairing until the place felt whole again. But now I understand that some structures weren't built on solid ground to begin with, and holding them up becomes a full-time job you never signed up for. Letting go of people, even people you once loved dearly, is one of the hardest and most freeing things you'll ever do. You don't do it with anger. You do it with acceptance. Some people are meant to teach you, not stay with you. And that's not failure. That's life. I've stopped clinging to what once was and started embracing what is. And what is quieter, simpler, but infinitely more peaceful. There are people I used to speak with every day who are now strangers, and yet I don't feel a hole where they used to be. I feel a space, a breathing room. It's not emptiness, it's openness. Space I can fill with walks under the trees, slow mornings, books I never finished, and thoughts I never had time to think. One of the things no one tells you about growing older is how much more clearly you begin to see people's intentions. Maybe it's experience, maybe it's instinct. But you start to notice the tone in someone's voice, the look in their eyes when they ask you for something. You notice the silence that follows when you're the one in need, and you learn to stop chasing people who never once took a step toward you. I used to excuse those things. Oh, they're just busy. They didn't mean it like that. I gave out more benefit of the doubt than I gave myself time to breathe. But now, I notice. I make note, and I make choices accordingly. I've replaced social gatherings with moments of meaning, a coffee with a true friend, a visit to my daughter's garden, a conversation with my neighbor who waves every morning, not out of habit, but out of genuine care. What surprises me most is how few people I actually need to feel fulfilled. A handful. That's all. And when I'm alone, I no longer feel like something's missing. In fact, I feel whole. Wholeness, I've learned, doesn't come from others completing you. It comes from stopping the constant attempt to please everyone else and finally pleasing yourself. I've even changed how I spend my days. I don't pack them with busyness the way I once did. I don't feel guilty for saying no to commitments. If anything, I've become more curious about how little I can do and still feel content. That was never the goal in my younger years, but now it feels like the whole point. I've also come to peace with the fact that I've outgrown some people. That used to make me feel guilty. How could I leave behind someone I once shared everything with? But the truth is, growing doesn't always happen together. Sometimes it happens apart. And if you're growing and they're not, there's only so far you can walk side by side before the road splits. When it does, you have two choices: slow yourself down to stay in step, or let go and keep walking. I've chosen to keep walking. At this age, guilt becomes lighter when you start carrying gratitude instead. Gratitude for the lessons, for the memories, for the growth. Even the painful endings become part of the gift, because they make you more intentional about the relationships you still have. Some people are confused by this version of me, the quieter me, the one who chooses the back row instead of the spotlight, the one who leaves a gathering early because she's tired of surface talk and craves her porch and a blanket. But this version of me is the most honest I've ever been. You see, I don't need to be liked by everyone anymore. I just want to be known by the right people. And that doesn't require loudness. It requires truth. Quiet, consistent, soul-deep truth. I've stopped offering explanations to people who never listened. I've stopped defending myself to those who already made up their minds. I've stopped saying yes when every part of me whispered no. What remains is a life that finally feels like mine. I know some people fear this shift. They think stepping back means giving up. But what if it means waking up? Waking up to the reality that time is running out, and we no longer want to spend it performing roles we never auditioned for. I don't want to be the version of me others need. I want to be the version of me I recognize when I look in the mirror. And that version? She needs less noise, fewer expectations, and more peace. I avoid people now because I've learned that not everyone is good for your soul. Some people make you question your worth. Others make you feel like you're not enough unless you're giving everything. And then there are those who drain you with their drama, their chaos, their endless need for attention. You don't need that. Not at this stage. Not ever. I've come to love people from a distance, to send kind thoughts instead of texts, to pray for their peace without welcoming their turmoil into mine. There is kindness in boundaries. There is love in letting go. I don't wish anyone harm. I simply wish myself peace, and that's a wish I now prioritize. I'm not lonely. I'm aligned. There's a stillness I've found in my days that I wouldn't trade for the most exciting party or most flattering compliment. That stillness is made of mornings where I don't rush, afternoons where I nap without guilt, and evenings where I watch the sun disappear behind trees that have seen more seasons than I have. This is my season now, a season of clarity, of careful yeses and unapologetic nos, and if that means I'm harder to reach, so be it. I'm busy tending to the parts of me I neglected when I was too busy being everything for everyone else. If you're on this path too, let me say this. Don't doubt it. Don't shrink back. Don't apologize for the peace you've earned. You're not being selfish. You're being wise. This isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. It's not about pushing people away. It's about pulling yourself close. It's not about giving up on connection. It's about connecting differently. And most of all, it's about finally realizing that a full life doesn't require a full room. It just requires a full heart. So yes, I avoid people now, because I choose peace over noise, presence over performance, and myself, finally myself, over the endless chase for approval. I hope you'll do the same, and if you've made it all the way to this point with me, maybe you've felt it too. That quiet nudge to choose a life that feels softer, truer, lighter. One where your days belong to you and your heart feels like home. You're not alone in that feeling, not by a long shot. So take this as your permission slip to rest, to retreat, to refill your spirit, and maybe, just maybe, to sit in silence long enough to remember how beautiful your own company really is. If that sounds like the kind of wisdom you're ready to live by, stick around and subscribe. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? We've built a quiet little village here. No loud parties, no exhausting performances, just truth, peace, and stories that remind you you're never too old to start choosing yourself.